maybe because it evolved over a long time, thousands of years, perhaps, as you point out, in one way or another, the Adam and Eve story is so pervasive throughout early human writing or talking or storytelling. But do you think that those profound issues resided there, or was Adam and Eve just a simple way of explaining something that people just had no possibility of understanding at the time? And let's just classify it and get it out of the way.
I mean, you ask a question in effect that's about the nature of myth, and all myths. I mean, would equally apply to Oedipus,
sure,
or to innumerable other myths that I believe and you believe don't have divine origin, that they were made up by people, and then they begin to circulate. If you're asking, is every thought that's been had about Oedipus or about Adam and Eve already in the head of the first person who circulated that story? Of course not. Anymore, it would be true of Shakespeare or Mozart or anyone else. I mean, but human beings don't. Our lives are, at least in the traces that we leave behind, are not limited to this particular moment or this particular identity, and the fantasy that it should all be in the head of this single individual is a kind of quasi-theological fantasy. I mean, that it's what happens is that we survive as a species because we've developed cultures that keep circulating objects, and the fact that it didn't all happen in the head of the person who came up with this doesn't mean that the questions are, of course, not real, or even not that they're not in the story. It has a slightly naive account of what it takes to create something, or how much is conscious in what one does. It's not an accident in Shakespeare's case that he invented virtually nothing. He's always ripping somebody off. But the ripping off is the circulating of stories. The little salt story that the third daughter who says, "I love you as much as salt," that goes back a tremendously long time. Shakespeare does a version of it in King Lear. Does that make the original story? Does that mean that it's less powerful? Does less profound? On the contrary, to me, the circulation actually is part of the profundity. And it goes back to something you said earlier about you read these things and you realize that the same problems. Well, that's true, but it's true that we experience reading the works by dead people often, that if they matter at all to us, we think, oh my God, this person has written a letter directly to me. And that's part of the thrill of the survival of anything from the past that actually is reaching you powerfully.